Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Lorenzo Neal, and I welcome you again to Zero Today with Dr. Lorenzo Neal. I am very honored to have a distinguished gentleman with me today in the person of the Reverend Dean Nelson. And if you haven't heard that name, you're going to hear a whole lot more of that name coming up in the nearby future. I prophesy it. Uh, um, Dean, tell my audience a little bit about yourself and, well, what you represent, what the organizations you represent, and the work that you do.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Neil. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. But yes, I serve in a few capacities, but one is with the Douglass Leadership Institute, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that focuses on engaging with the faith community, the African American faith community, where we emphasize four areas: strengthening the Black family, criminal justice reform, economic opportunity, and educational opportunity. Additionally, I serve as the president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, for which you are a proud member and leader within that organization. Always grateful to be with you. But the Frederick Douglass Foundation actually is a political organization that has the same values as the other. We like to say our tagline is righteousness, justice, liberty, and virtue. The Frederick Douglass Foundation has several chapters around the country with presidents in those states that emphasize those things that I mentioned to you, all kind of under the banner of the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass. I'm also proud to serve as the executive director for Human Coalition Action. Human Coalition Action is a nonprofit entity that is a part of Human Coalition, which has become quietly one of the largest pro-life organizations in the country that provide free services for women facing an unplanned pregnancy. We will serve over 100,000 women this year, particularly minority women in urban communities that are having difficulty when they recognize that they're pregnant. We provide solutions and alternatives other than abortion. So we are a pro-life organization. But man, I'm also a minister of the gospel like you. And I'm just grateful to be a part of this opportunity to share with you a little bit tonight about our organization, the work that we do, and anything else that we can discuss about Black progress in America.
And for full disclosure for my audience, as Reverend Nelson said, I am part of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, particularly with Mississippi. I don't know how much I actually do, but I've been a part of this organization for a number of years now. Um, it's been a while, and I've been blessed to be a part of a lot of events that this organization has done nationally. Um, and I really appreciate the heart that you have for the Black community, for the faith community, the Black faith community in particular, and everything else. And again, you hear my little dude in the background. Whenever he's heard, and he's off. So I want to jump right into this. You serve in a number of capacities, um, and I know we've had discussions before, and I said 2020 has been a very interesting year, and that's the best way that I can describe it. But share some of the things that you've experienced, both personally and I guess professionally in 2020 that has impacted you and probably uh, impacted the way you approach the work that you do.
Yeah, well, again, I'm grateful to be on with you. 2020 has been a interesting, in many ways, challenging year. We're still in the midst of a pandemic that has had negative impact on our country through a virus that came in, and all of us are quite aware, of what has taken place. I'm proud that many of the church colleagues that I know have been working kind of on the front lines, one, to be able to encourage people, particularly within our communities, when we've had churches that have been kind of forced to close. They found innovative ways to engage and to encourage people. Proud that many of these churches, as well as nonprofit organizations and small businesses that we have worked with, partnering with the White House in the Trump administration, specifically in the area of the Small Business Administration, trying to get relief and resources to African American communities. We, through our organization, helped over 200 small businesses, churches, and nonprofits to secure almost $4 million through the PPP program. So it's been difficult, but as we know, with God, all things are possible, and we have seen some extraordinary people come through just in fantastic ways within serving their communities, and we're grateful for the relationships that we have had with the Small Business Administration to help in those situations. So that's just a little bit of what we have done over the past several months, but we're all about trying to provide solutions. We don't believe that government is the sole entity. We believe that God has ordained the family, God has ordained the church, as well as God has ordained the state to have their specific roles in the uplift of communities. And so we're proud to work with families, we're proud to work with churches, and we're proud to work with the state, whether it's the state or federal government, to help really protect and to serve, because we believe that at the end of the day, according to the book of Romans, that's the primary role of government, is to protect those who are innocent, to punish those who do wrong, and ultimately to affirm and to encourage those that do well within our civic society.
And that's a wonderful segue into my next question I wanted to ask you. Being pro-life has become as divisive as other issues, particularly regarding Blacks. And those who are more progressive or liberal are pushing the idea now more than ever for the need for a less family-centered dynamic within Black community. And without outright saying it, a greater sense of dependency upon government, state, for sustenance. Now, how do you address that, being a Black leader and a minister, regarding both the issue of life and all that other stuff that you just said, that you just talked about?
Yeah, man. Well, first I'll say that, at our organization, as you well know, again, with the under the banner of the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, we are committed to Black progress. And we do that, though, from a faith framework. And so that means that family is extremely important. You'll remember that Frederick Douglass once said that it is easier to build strong children than to than to repair broken men. Frederick Douglass was an advocate for the family because he was born into slavery and didn't know his own family. He was never certain of who his real father was, although it was suspected that it might have been his slave master. And even his mother, he didn't get to know because she was moved off to a plantation that was at least 12 miles away from where he lived. So he was committed to family because of what he didn't have because of slavery. And so we even have great stories of Frederick Douglass talking about, and his children talking about, how it was so important for Anna, Frederick Douglass's wife, to have the children before they could even eat a meal in the evening, that they had to quote a Bible verse. So there was an emphasis from Frederick Douglass on how important the family unit was. And I believe that we have seen agents that have tried to undermine the Black family, whether we go back to the time period of the quote unquote Great Society with Lyndon Johnson, who tried to suggest it was a good idea to have the state to be more involved. But many people don't know, that's well documented in Liberal Fascism, written by Jonah Goldberg, that they sent over 100,000 workers, particularly into Black and urban communities, to convince Black people that they call the two prouds to get onto welfare. And we have seen since that time period, welfare kind of taking the place of the Black man, and it has had horrible effects on the Black family, to where we have over 70% of children that live with only one parent. And that isn't to say that there aren't good examples. There are great examples. But when there's bad public policy that kind of chips away at the foundation of the family, then that's something that we should be alarmed about. You would know, and many of your listeners might know, that it was discovered not that long ago from Black Lives Matter as an organization that they believed in the dismantling of the nuclear family. From a biblical standpoint, we know that it takes a mother and a father to properly raise a children. It's hard enough in this culture, even with a husband and a wife, but we know that that is a biblical principle and that families do well. But in cases where that's not the case, we have a responsibility of extended kin and the church to come alongside to provide that help for Black families. And so that's something that we believe in strongly. And we see, in my opinion, one of the most demonic attacks that have been on the Black family has been the push of abortion within Black communities. It's been well documented at a site that's referred to as Protecting Black Life, that almost 80% of Planned Parenthood's surgical abortion facilities can be found in minority neighborhoods, Black and Latino. And people think about Planned Parenthood as a great organization because of their name, but in reality, it is a billion-dollar nonprofit that makes most of its money getting it from the federal government and providing abortions. It is the #1 abortion provider in the country. They don't do much planning for parents. What they do is abortions. And their founder, Margaret Sanger, in a letter that she wrote in 1939 to Clarence Gamble, stated, "We don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." She would say further that the minister is the one who can straighten out their more rebellious members if this idea ever occurs to them. So what we have done through our work through the Frederick Douglass Foundation and the Douglass Leadership Institute is to partner with organizations like Human Coalition that provide free services to women facing unplanned pregnancies, to give them help, not pushing them to try to make the decision of taking the lives of their preborn children. So that's a lot to say, but those are some thoughts that I have as to what we try to do to partner with good organizations that have good public policy that strengthen our Black families, rather than to erode the foundation, the biblical foundation of the strength of Black families.
Excellent, excellent. Now, one of your positions and one of your policies, or I don't know if it's policies, but things that you state with DLI and Frederick Douglass Foundation is about criminal justice reform. And as we know, both the Obama administration and Trump administration have semi-addressed it when it comes to, I was trying to straighten my bow tie, when it comes to criminal justice reform. And President Trump, more recently, with the First Step Act, a very broad bipartisan effort addressed the need to help, particularly Black and Latino, but more specifically Black men.
Yes.
Because, as you stated, it's very clear historically, Black men were the focus of a lot of the agendas that have led to deterioration of Black family, nuclear family. So in light of that, and the Black Lives Matter movement, what can be done for, and I'm trying to, I had my notes here and I'm trying to go off the top of my head, but what can really be done to address to get the inclusion of Black men back engaged in family, faith, and full functionality within the community?
Yeah, there's some basic things I think that could be done, and I will borrow from a phrase that was popularized by President Obama, an initiative that he had called "My Brother's Keeper," because I do believe that for things to get better, it is going to take those of us who are doing well to commit ourselves to helping other people. We won't see success in the Black community until we dedicate ourselves to helping ourselves. That means, one, I need to be accountable to somebody else to live a life that honors God and that takes care of my family. But then I need to go one step further and find out, who can I help? What brother can I come alongside to encourage and to challenge? This is one of the things that we've advocated through the Frederick Douglass Foundation and the Douglass Leadership Institute, something that we push through our network of faith-based leaders. Preachers need to do a better job of just preaching sermons on Sunday and actually disciple young men. Take them under your wing so that we can see a difference. What really makes a difference in the lives of other people is the influence of another person. Jesus influenced his 12 disciples by living with them, by teaching them, by encouraging them, by instructing them. We need to do that with one another. And I believe that one of the biblical principles that you can see all throughout the New Testament is how we treat those who are in prison. And I believe that President Trump has done a fantastic job. If you go back, 4 years ago, he didn't campaign on criminal justice reform. But once he heard from leaders like Jaron Smith, Christian leaders, Black leaders, about how there was a disproportionate impact with sentencing, particularly for Black men, largely done through the 1994 crimes bill that was initiated and pushed really by Vice President Joe Biden. So I believe that if you take a look at some small steps that were done with President Obama, but some real huge steps that were done. And this is why I do give credit to President Trump, because this wasn't a political campaign promise that he made. It wasn't like something he was looking for, but he saw this as an opportunity to help those who have been left behind. And through the First Step Act, more than 3,000 Americans have been released from prison, and 90% of those sentences have been reduced, where they've had those sentences reduced, were Black people. You may have heard the fantastic story of Alice Johnson, who in her personal testimony into how now historic, there's a historic Super Bowl ad that was done as a result of this. But Alice Johnson was a grandmother
Hmm.
whose time didn't fit the crime. And she is so grateful to God. She became a minister of the gospel while she was there, a productive person within society. But one of the things that the First Step Act did was to shorten mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug crimes and provided judges greater liberty to go around the mandatory minimums. The law also allows for offenders sentenced under racially motivated mandatory minimums to petition their case to be reevaluated. And lastly, there was a whole amount of funding, I think $1.6 billion over 5 years in societal benefits. So, and this is just the first step. The president has promised to do even more. So I believe that there are things that we need to address that the government can do, but there are things that we as individuals, as churches, also need to do. And I'm all about challenging the church and men to take our place, to stand up and to do better, to serve our communities and to serve one another.
I I completely agree. Uh, Keeping along the lines of Black men, uh, there's headlines trending or tweets trending or whatever you want to call them, that uh, there are a significant number of Black men, including Black celebrities, Black male celebrities, who are openly coming out in support of President Trump for whatever reason or another. For the rapper 50 Cent, is strictly fiscal. He wants to save money. And for Ice Cube, it's his contract with Black America. But for the average Black male, a lot of them are beginning to express discontent with the organized Democratic Party. and are shifting in support of Trump. How address that for me? What's your perspective on that? And is it good, bad, or neither?
Yeah, well, man, I think again, and I've had these conversations with people like Reverend Al Sharpton. I've had these conversations with leaders like Bob Woodson from the right, as well as from the left. I think that it does our community no good if we put all of our eggs in one basket. We need to have people that are in both political parties that are committed to Black progress. I think that most Americans don't realize that over 70% of Black people say that they are either conservative or moderate. But
That's
yet,
correct.
many times it seems as if the only people that are speaking up for us are kind of liberal. And so I think that what we're seeing in our country is really the result, or I should say, since the manifestation of what President Trump said, 4 years ago. He said, basically, what do you have to lose? And I think that more people are saying, hey, look, we had a Black president. Our condition didn't really change that much. Maybe we should look a little deeper. Maybe we should look a little bit more in terms of policy that can help. And maybe if this guy who didn't promise to push criminal justice reform, but did, he didn't make promises about, the First Step Act. He didn't make promises about, opportunity zones. He didn't make promises about urban revitalization, but those are all things that he did do. He didn't make promises early on about historically Black colleges and universities, but when he saw some of the problems that were going on within our country and got a little bit of an understanding about how government works at the federal level and saw that he could at least provide some solutions to these challenges, he did that. So I think that there are more Black men and some women who are looking and saying, look, we've heard all of the nice words, we've heard the platitudes, but maybe we should look to somebody who has not been involved in government to come in and to make a difference. If this business leader could make these deals, make a whole lot of money, do real estate deals and investing, maybe he can use some of those same kind of principles to be successful in government. And I think that more people are doing it, but they're doing it also because there are people like yourself that are saying, hey, we should give, both parties a chance. We should give the Republican Party a chance. Let's face it, Frederick Douglass was the one who says, I am a Black, dyed-in-the-wool Republican and would never be a part of any other party but the party of liberty and progress. I think that more and more people like yourself, myself, that are ordinary people that say, these are the principles that I live by. And when I look at the Democrat Party, I look at some of the principles that they have outlined. Those are things that I don't really agree with. And let's not even go down the list of things as it pertains to morality or biblical values. But I think that that's one of the reasons that you're seeing more Black men show interest, because of the track record that the president has, and some of them are willing to take a risk.
And I appreciate you bringing it from that perspective, because that, as I talk with young Black men, and well, more particularly young Black men who are voting age, that is the perspective. They're tired of being promised one thing and reneged on. It's like playing a game of spades, and your partner says that they have so many, they got so many books, and they turns out they don't really know how to play, and they always reneging. I guess I hope you got that reference. Yeah. Staying with this, um, Ice Cube recently stated that he's gone on the record for the last several months talking about what's in it for the Black community. What do they have to offer? What does both parties have to offer? He developed what he called the contract with Black America, presented it to both parties. One said, we'll get with you after the election. The other one, or both campaigns, let me be more specific. One said, we'll get with you after, but if we win. The other one says, well, whether we win or lose, we're still going to try to implement this into our campaign. Now, he's been catching a whole lot of slack from Black leaders, because he simply said, I don't care who hears me. I just want this out there. And the Trump campaign was the one that responded. Now, compare his plan with the Platinum Plan. I know you're familiar with Trump's Platinum Plan. So, how does that Platinum Plan really impact Black Americans if Trump is reelected? How will that really impact, from your perspective, Black Americans?
Yeah, well, I was behind the scenes a little bit with some of this. I can tell you from what I know that Ice Cube is for real. He is not making promises to any party or to any presidential candidate, but he is very serious about saying what's in it for us. He works very closely, I can tell you, in his professional capacity with. Um, with conservatives, with Republicans, and I believe that he is looking for opportunity for his people, for our people. And so, even though when he first put out his contract with Black America, it wasn't a full plan, it wasn't in depth, but he teamed up with Chris Broussard, who as a sportscaster and has been a
Mhm.
very strong supporter of the Douglass Leadership Institute. Chris is a dedicated Christian and added to that something that's called a neo-reconstruction plan. So it had a little more meat in it, and Ice Cube adopted that and brought it into his plan. And they took that. The Trump administration did take that, looked very closely at it, and crafted what they came up with, which is the Platinum Plan, which is primarily an economic, and safety plan that, number one, wants to give greater access to capital to Black Americans. It wants to push safety and justice, despite what we hear the rhetoric from liberals and from some Black Lives Matter advocates, not all, but instead of dismantling the police or defunding the police, this is about safety, because most Black Americans, the vast majority of Black Americans, feel that we need to keep our police or either increase the level of police, in our communities. And so I've heard people like Tyler Perry and others echo that very strongly within our community. So I think the Platinum Plan has also discussed some other key aspects of funding to the Black community. And when we say funding, we're talking very specifically about providing 3 million new jobs in the Black community through over $500 billion of access to capital. Now, one of the things that I was proud about with that the president also mentioned is that they wanted to have 500,000 new Black-owned businesses, and this access to capital was also going to be allowable for churches and faith-based nonprofits to take advantage of. He recognizes how important the African American church is to our community. In some ways, I do believe that we've lost our voice in some regards because we have not, I believe, lived up to some of the moral standards. But still, the Black church and the African American pastor has a special role within our community. And President Trump did not want to leave us out. And so when they talk about expanding opportunity zones, and when they talk about this, $500 billion of additional capital, they wanted to make sure that the church was also included in that.
And that's again, you're on point, because that's the next question I was going to ask when it comes to the Black faith community, Black church. Um, how do you think? Well, not how do you think. Let me reframe this question here. How influential do you think uh, we should be as clergy, pastors, and other persons within the Black faith communities? And I'm not just talking about the church, because I don't just work with the church. I work with non-believers. I work with persons from Muslim faith and other faiths, but particularly Black people who are part of faith groups. How influential do you think they will be regarding uh, implementing this plan if Trump is reelected, Or if he isn't reelected, what should they do to ensure that something similar to that plan gets carried out?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I do believe that the African American church has a special place. You and I, as ministers of the gospel, know that the Bible even challenges us that that if judgment comes, it should first fall at what the house of God. That we are looked at as standard bearers in our community. So I do believe that we need to set the bar, not just for the church, but even from a biblical perspective, we as ministers of the gospel are supposed to have a good reputation even outside of the household of faith. And so I believe that we should be that city set on a hill. We should be an example to others. Doesn't mean that we're perfect. It does mean, though, that when it comes to matters of righteousness and justice, that the church has a unique place under God to be a salt and to be light. That being said, regardless of who is elected president, on November the 3rd or whenever we find out. But regardless of, I believe that the church should be at the table, but we shouldn't compromise our values. This is the part that I feel like is extremely disappointing, because it almost seems like that the Democratic Party and liberals and progressives basically say, well, we know y'all are going to be with us regardless. And so they constantly push initiatives that are inconsistent with biblical Christianity, whether it is pushing abortion. We're not just talking about the old days with Bill Clinton, safe, legal, and rare. They want abortion on demand all the way up until the moment that the child is born. And in even some states, even if the child is born from a botched abortion, they believe that that child should be left to die. So I think that there are extreme positions there. Their constant push. If you look at Joe Biden's plan that he's offered, it actually gives many more pages and words dedicated to LGBTQ than
Yeah.
it does to Black people. So
Yes.
I think Black people need to rise up and take a place. Now, don't get me wrong, we have a responsibility to demonstrate love and compassion to every group of people, but we don't have the luxury of changing biblical standards. We didn't create them. God created them. We have to come under God's authority. And I have happily worked alongside people who have expressed challenges with same-sex attraction and things like that. We don't shun anybody, but we all have to come under God's rulership. We all are called to be disciples of Jesus and to call him Lord. And part of that process is surrendering every aspect of our lives, whether it is our private lives, our sex lives, our thoughts. All of that has to come under the subject and the lordship of Jesus. So the church should be involved in these areas, providing radical love, providing high commitment to integrity, financial accountability. We need to be able to provide all of those things when we come to the table, but we do need to hold officials accountable, and we hold them accountable to the biblical standards that we have. And I believe that when we do that, when the church demonstrates biblical morality, when the church demonstrates grace and compassion, she's at her best. And I believe that we have a lot of room to grow. But I think that if we as ministers are willing to hold each other accountable and to go to government with our plan, and I would invite people to check out Chris Broussard's neo-reconstruction plan. I don't agree with every point in it, but I do think that it is laced with compassion, but it also has a commitment to biblical principle to see how we can see economic change within our community, how we can see educational opportunities for all people, particularly the least of these, how we can address issues of systemic racism if those things exist. I believe in some regards that type of thing does exist. How we can overcome health disparities. I believe that we can do it, but it only will happen when the church commits itself first to the Lord and commits itself to the biblical principles of serving one another.
Excellent response. And I wanna be real direct to you. Should Black folk be conservative? So should they actually adhere or subscribe to conservative values? Should they support candidates who say they're conservative, or should they even be so radical as to join the Republican Party? I ask that because being center right myself, uh, currently independent, but um, I know that right now in this political climate, the black community, the black voice is trying to find its place because we're really not, if from my perspective, we're really not fitting into the Democratic Party's platform or voice unless we fit the intersectionality that they're mandating now that you and to a degree we also don't fit into this largely white Christian evangelical um, Republican conservative uh, perspective. So what should we do? Those who are like myself, who are center, maybe leaning to the right, but really just center. And we
Hmm.
just wish that we could find a space. What is your suggestion?
Well, I would say first to those of the household of faith to be reminded that our citizenship is in heaven.
Amen.
We are
Like,
just sojourners down here. I believe that we have a responsibility to be advocates for righteousness and justice. And it may even depend on where you live. In your state, it might make more sense for you to be an independent, to have a strong voice. What I learned a long time ago was all of us seem to be, 90% of us seem to be putting our eggs in one basket. That made no sense to me. And I saw when I went and I changed my party affiliation from Democrat to Republican, and I saw, hey, I don't agree with everybody over here, but this is a place that felt fine for me. And I began to advocate for things like we believe in the Republican Party, because political parties will come and go, but we need to have strong witnesses to be in both places. So I would say to most people, look, most of our eggs are in one basket, but our values, if you read the Republican Party platform, 80% of Black Americans, I would say, would agree with everything that's in that basic platform. Um, so I would say investigate that. And yeah, if there are people that you don't like associate with and you don't, know if you feel like them, look, I've been to large Democrat gatherings. I felt like a fish out of water in some of those environments. I mean, the stuff that they were talking about and the environmental stuff, that it was like they were worshiping a completely different God than I was worshiping. So I would just encourage people, number one, to know what you believe. And then when you know what you believe, find groups of people to go and to advocate for those things that you believe. And I would say, again, according to biblical principle, is righteousness and justice. You can't just say that we're for justice, because if you have justice without a plumb line, you'll
hmm,
be advocating for justice for anything and everything. And that's not real justice. We need to have, I believe, a biblical foundation. And most Black folks are religious people. We read our Bibles more than the average person. We go to church more than the average person. But somehow the aspect of morality within our arena is overlooked, and I think that we need to have a commitment to that. So my strong answer is that I believe that more of us need to associate with the Republican Party. Many of us need to be independents, but all of us definitely do not need to be Democrats, particularly when they have pushed their values that are inconsistent with ours down our throats, and we act like we just take it. And they make us feel like that we should be ashamed for believing what we believe. I'm not going to do that. And I would encourage all people to have that same type of mindset.
you said something that just made me chuckle a moment ago because recently a comedian, Chelsea Handler, was on a late night talk show and speaking about rapper 50 Cent and stated that he should not be supporting Trump because he is black. And then she offered the innuendo that I will not be restate as an incentive to help him get back in his place. And it is rather sad that there are probably plenty of others like her who have that mindset regarding blacks that they need to stay in that place and not think for themselves. So anyway, we have run out of time. So as I said before, I've just honored. I've been having a wonderful dialogue and interview with the Reverend Dean Nelson, uh, chairman of the Douglass Leadership Institute and chairman or president, whatever your title is.
Whatever it is this week, right?
Yeah, of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. For my listeners who have piqued their curiosity, how can they get in touch with you if they are interested in uh, learning more about DLI and FDF? Can you give them the information on how to get in touch with that organization and anything else?
Absolutely. Yeah, if they want to visit us at FDF, that's FDF, like Frederick Douglass Foundation, fdfnational.org, they can find out more information about the Frederick Douglass Foundation. If they want to visit DL Institute, so that's Douglass Leader, dlinstitute.org, they can find out more information about the Douglass Leadership Institute. And if they want more information just on the great abolitionist himself, they can visit whoisfrederickdouglass.org as well. Lorenzo, thank you so much for your commitment to the Lord and serving your community and for the opportunity of having me on your program.
Thank you. We can go back and forth with these commendations, and I wish I had more time, but I just appreciate you carving out this small amount of time that you have today to be on the show, and appreciate you so much. Is there any upcoming events with DLI that you would like to share before we close out?
Yes, sir. So if they visit both of those websites, they can find out. But every first Tuesday, unless the Tuesday falls on, excuse me, every first Tuesday, unless the month comes in on a Tuesday, we have a fantastic Leaders Live call where we've had people like the Honorable K. Coles James. We've had fantastic leaders like Benjamin Watson, former NFL football player. And up next, we have the scholar Shelby Steele, who has a brand new movie that he has released that is talking about Michael Brown and the incident that took place back in Ferguson. So a brand new documentary. So he's going to be on with us. I believe that is the first, not election day, the third, but the following Tuesday. So we'll have him on. So if you visit us, that usually is at 7 p.m. in the evening. So we have this every month, a Leaders Live call with some fantastic leaders. It's been extremely well attended and fabulous. So I would encourage people to do that. But for more updated information, they can visit us at those websites to learn of events that may be coming up virtual or events that might be in their area.
All right. Thank you so much. And before we get off, I just want to remind everyone that we only have several days left before the election, and want to make sure that you are an informed voter. Vote your values, vote your principles, and vote confidently. Vote confidently. Seek the Lord about it. If you must, you should. And thank you again. God bless you, man.
Bless you too, brother. God, take care.